Good evening, everybody. How's weather? Not too hot.
Beautiful.
Okay? Not too hot, not too cold. Good.
That will change.
Yeah. Anyway, good.
Are you guys good? Everybody doing well? Geshe was asking.
You guys see that all India masters? This is the Buddha's terms, the arhats. Who meet the Buddha's term in Buddha, then Buddha teach them, then they practice, they become arhat.
Judgment, yeah. They're arhats. But also they're called the Nathan.
Nathan
means
old,
like an elder.
older.
They're the elder disciples of Buddha, kind of the caretakers of his teaching after he passed away.
Yeah. We have complete all them here. He doesn't miss anyone.
A complete set.
Or complete set.
There are 16 altogether.
But anyway, even people doesn't know, they don't have any motivation, but when they can see the Buddha's images, they get big merit. Of course, their motivation and faith, things, of course, they're big merit, but even they don't have any motivation, but they can see, enjoy, we can enjoy that, it's nice, yes. And they get a good, big merit. I think this center has Lord Buddha's images, Lord texts. Even we can go to the big Tibetan great monasteries. They don't have much same. Maybe they will be great. Most same, We have kindness over there. It's Buddha's teaching, main teaching, 100 points. In some part they have 108 points, they will know some more big. That's what we call dangerous. Danger means, the transmission or commentary. Commentary that kind of the Indian masters. Most India, maybe couple some Tibetans or some maybe Chinese, about most Indian. But they're all, I think they're 200, usually 220 poems, some part of 212 poems. They all talk about how you develop our mind, how we transfer our mind, how achieve our arhats, how achieve enlightenment. They all talk about that. Different way, different idea, different method. Otherwise, the main topic is same. Then we also study part of this texts, and we talk about first we say we need to transform or develop our mind. Then we need to know what kind of mind. What kind of mind we have to transform. What kind of mind we have to develop. What kind of mind we have to give up, right? Abandon.
Give up.
Give up. We have to, usually we always, Buddhism say, subdue your mind. Control your mind. If you need happiness, relax, joy, first you need to control your mind. Develop your mind. Then we need to know what kind of mind we have to develop. What kind of mind we have to transform. What kind of mind we have to subdue it? Subdue it.
Subdue.
Subdue.
Yes.
Subdue ourselves. No, my English there, most people know their broken English. But even people very mortal.
People who are very mortal in what?
Is it shame?
Yeah, embarrassed.
Embarrassed?
Yeah.
They cannot talk. I am Tibetan nomad person, not shame. Therefore, whatever I know, just say. Right? Usually many people doesn't want to talk. If they doesn't know real, then many people friend they not nervous. But I'm also not young anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not no of course.
Yeah.
Not young. I'm not ashamed. That means that means I'm very good, therefore I'm not ashamed. But I don't know how ashamed.
Yeah, tender money.
Yeah.
Yeah, tender money. Understand it?
Yeah, good, very good.
Yeah, meaning one of these.
Yeah, trouble money.
Yeah, trouble money. I'm not so good. Not
So
very good.
Yeah.
Trouble strong.
Even, even Buddha, Buddha not shame. They all abandon the shame. Shame is also part of our also ego. We don't want people to say bad things. But I don't know how you shame, therefore I say whatever I know, just talk. So,
it's not that he doesn't have shame because it's so great, yeah, but he just doesn't have shame because he's
doesn't know how you shame.
He doesn't know. He doesn't
Better
have
call
shame. Go bagla.
You can put something on our face.
Mask.
Yeah, mask.
Mm.
If you put mask, then you can talk everything, Who are you? Right? People are the normal people who have put mask. They are not shame. Anyway, this is therefore we talk about, it's very important. Usually we talk about always mind. We have physical suffering and mental suffering. Physical suffering is, some doctors cut, some put medicine, put maybe more clothes, maybe AC, air condition, food. They can cover down, physical. Right?
Yeah, they can alleviate physical suffering.
Physical
The physical suffering.
It's quite we have nice house, comfortable room, everything fine. Then physical suffering, maybe doctors cut a little bit, piece. They can cover. But mental,
psychological, and
psychological suffering,
more complicated words.
more complicated. Doctor cannot fix. Usually we Tibetan Buddhism say we always sick person. We have very, very bad disease. This kind of disease is not cutting the visions. Also, they doesn't see them how much they check. How you say?
You can't no matter how much they examine you, they can't see the disease.
Therefore, this kind of medicine is only teaching. Doesn't matter, Buddhism, non-Buddhism. Only teachings.
Only teaching can cure.
Cure, right? Now what the nasa? They just something on the nasa. So is. They just
Yeah. So then the primary cause, the root of that illness, is the three poisons: attachment, hatred, and ignorance. And those three roots have many assistants. So now we have to be able to identify the pentoktam. Sorry. We have to be able to how can I say?
무슨 말?
Yine, yeah, 무슨 yine.
그래서 빼나 먼저 막자고.
Yeah. So
막자거나 뭐 뺀다. 마음이 찾아 무슨 거로 가와에 사자 가오 감동 따오러.
yeah. So okay, I was a little bit confused the metaphor, but now I remember. We used also Sunday, I think, the same metaphor. So because you have these three primary poisons, and then also their helpers. So in a way, it's like we have to be able to identify where is the general, which is the three, primary afflictions that cause most of the trouble, and where are their soldiers, their foot soldiers, which are all the little different afflictions that they wield to kind of make us miserable. We have to be able to see where they are and what they are doing. So for that reason, we have this text, which is primarily about, and generally about the mind.
It's good. Anish is not here better.
Only you guys think that, because there is nobody over there to tell me when there is a mistake. So my apologies. Anila isn't here, so it's gonna be.
When she's here, he's a little lazy.
You just have to focus more.
No, it's true. It's true.
Anyway, I know. Therefore, now come to that same good same.
Yeah. So So now we are studying about the mind, and so far we have studied about the main mind, the primary mind. Yeah, we already studied that. So now we are going to talk about the mental states, or mental factors is the term that they use here, which are like the assistants or aids to the primary minds. And there are 51 of those. So, without a doubt, we have to be able to understand each one of these individually, all of them. Mental factors.
Factors we necessarily need. Some we don't need.
Yeah. So fix. Okay. Anyway, to clarify, we have to be able to identify among the 51 which ones are ones that we want, that are necessary and useful, and which ones are the ones that we don't want, that we should give up or get rid of. So now we are at the point number 2, the explanation of the mental factors, which is on page 16, starting on page 16. Okay, so then we have the line just below the heading there. Regarding the entity of the mental factors, it is just as it has been said in a discussion of the 5 aggregates, which Geshe points out as a text by Vasubandhu. So we've seen like the 2 brothers we mentioned last week, Asanga and Vasubandhu, who wrote a lot about Abhidharma stuff. This one is by Vasubandhu. And he poses the question in this text, what are these phenomena that are mental factors? So the answer is they are phenomena concomitant with the mind, which means that whenever there is a mind, you have these mental factors that are concomitant isn't what did she say before? Hang on, the tungden. Anyway, the tungden. Anyway, so what it means is that whenever you have the main mind, you have a mental factor that comes at the same time like simultaneously, and also with some similarity to the main mind.
Okay.
Concomitance, yeah.
어디지? 시수마 따라서 다 내가 생주라 얘나 다 생주라 얘와 가서 그래서 다 맞추나 준 그래서.
So so if we divide those mental factors that always come along with main minds, they end up being 51.
그래봐. 다 너무 좋아서 꿈을 아세지 그래서.
The first 5 are called the 5 omnipresent mental factors.
아니 꿈을나 시박한데 시박 차상도 냠도록 꿈을.
So these 5 omnipresent mental factors go together with every single awareness, every single mind.
누정으로 고이 때문에 먼저 딸내가 멈춰도 말했어.
Yeah.
누정으로 고이 그랬어. We need that.
Yeah.
Otherwise there's no work.
Did you guys get it?
Yeah,
It was clear. Yeah. So we need those 5. If we didn't have those 5, then consciousness, like awareness, being able to know things, wouldn't function. So those are necessary things for competent mental functioning.
아니면 넘발로서 인행 아스 누정하고 그랬어. We need also that.
Right. Then after that, we have the 5 object ascertaining mental factors. Aspiration and so forth, doesn't list them all out here, but those also are 5 that we need. We have to have those.
다 대발로서 그와 지지 좀더 약보를 했어.
Then after that, we have the 11 virtuous mental factors. These are good. These are useful because they are good.
다 내처럼서 짠일이 다 큰소 다 약보를 말했어.
Yeah. So then after that, the 6 root afflictions. These are the ones that are no good. They're bad. These are the root, the main. These are the general of the army of bad minds, afflictions. So then after that, there are the 20 nishu. Yeah. So then after that, there are the 20 secondary afflictions, anger and so forth, belligerence and so forth. Yeah, these we also don't need. We do fine without those. So then the 4 changeable mental factors, the yapoi. Yeah, these can be either good or bad. It really depends on the circumstance. Okay, so then, this is a summary of the 51, and thus, just as it has been said in a discussion of the 5 aggregates, the text by Vasubandhu again, 5 are omnipresent. Yeah, so then 5 are omnipresent, 5 ascertain objects individually, 11 are virtues, 6 are afflictions, others are secondary afflictions, and 4 are changeable.
Okay.
So then first we have the 5 omnipresent mental factors, which these we need and are always there. The first one is feeling.
아니 좋아서 내가 또 좋아되도 다니고 맥하잖아. 가니까 슈드가 아주 좋아하는데 팀들은 좋아서 내가 지금 말했어.
So
지금 같이 와. 슈드가 거기서 좋아하는 명이. 내가 근데 좋아서 시간이 내가 지금 말했어. 좋아.
내게 책이 그래. 연결해서
좋아. 맥하잖아. 아주 좋아. 빨리 슈. 내 지나 거기 나서 당겨 말아. 먼저 맨 갑자기는.
예. Right. So basically, this feeling here is what it sounds like, and if we didn't have this, if we lack this feeling, then if we are injured, something hit us, or we are burnt, or whatever, we wouldn't know that. So we have to have feeling. It's a functional part of being a conscious being. You need that.
무슨 다들 알을 다 제대로 공부하면 되가 들어와. 담보 뒤쪽이야. 공부 오래 갖고 코로나 가봐야 되시 말이야. 들어와.
오케이.
담보 인이 끊어가 그러나 좋아. 내시 셈바
Okay. So, right. So then, basically, these first 5, feeling, discrimination, which has to do with identifying things, intention, contact, and attention. We will go into detail about these below, but in general, these listed out here, 1 through 5, occur with every awareness. Every state of awareness has these 5.
So this says they're mental factors, but the way you describe feeling sounds like it's a physical sensation. So is that not quite clear?
I think we will go into a long explanation of it just below.
They all, each one more details come later. Okay. This is this. Also, who Kashelaya, Karlama Shimedo called Chipa, Saint Lama Metropolitan. To hear Lomashike Shema Izula, and Tanya, Domashan, this is the
Yeah, so then he's giving another example why these are considered like necessary, things that we should have, that we need. If we lack discrimination, which has to do with the ability to identify, which also is involved in the use of language or being able to recognize people or objects or things like that, if you lack that function, if that doesn't happen with your normal awareness, it can cause problems. So there's for example, I think maybe Geshe is thinking about Alzheimer's disease, where there starts to be a breakdown in the ability to identify objects correctly, and it can actually become dangerous for the person who has that deficiency. They might, mistake a dangerous object for something that they should, put up against their head, or there's a lot of examples where if this faculty, if this mental factor doesn't function correctly, then you have a lot of trouble. It impedes your ability to function as a person. Alzheimer's disease. So he's saying again the example of, for example, people who suddenly lose the ability to understand words or to recognize common things. When people are talking, the faculty doesn't work. When it doesn't work correctly, that type of mental problem, he is saying, has to do with this discrimination not working, not functioning properly.
And that's so they all come there, okay, one by one. But we have this kind of toward us, but that's the torture. That Kunungas not toward the Semba, Kunungas, all the men,
Yeah.
Chasang.
So then he's saying these 5, the omnipresent mental factors. The Tibetan word for omnipresent is made of 2 syllables, kun and dro. Kun means all of them, and dro means going together or working together. So it means that these 5 are always working with every main mind that occurs.
Some kids go.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah. So it's like some people who have a friend or something. The ropa. I'm not sure if I get the entire thing. Some people are not good at helping, and some people always help no matter what. Is this?
Some people really easy to relationship. Everyone, whoever, doesn't matter. High, low, education, doesn't matter. Some people go relationship.
Yeah, relationship. Yeah.
Everyone, really easy. This kind of man go all the men.
Okay, so you guys get it? So a person, some people are easy to get along with anyone.
Well, now,
anybody. So if somebody comes in who's good, they can get along and they can go together somewhere, do something. someone who comes in's bed, they also can get along and, hang out. These minds are like that. It doesn't matter the good mind or bad mind, main mind that comes or whatever. These just can go with anyone. They go together with any of them. So this is like saying that these minds are concomitant was the word that we used before. They always concomitantly occur with any main mind, any of them. And mikshe jeje the kundronga yore. Yeah. So he's saying that it's also the case. The word concomitant there also means that the main minds that they occur along with have to be concomitant with them. So they are of the same type. So you don't have like a feeling, for example, that goes with an I consciousness. So say you have as a main mind an I consciousness, you wouldn't have a tongue feeling with an I consciousness. The feeling that accompanies the I consciousness would be an I consciousness feeling. And the discrimination that accompanies it would be an I consciousness discrimination. In the same way, like all of the main minds, so the eye consciousness, tongue consciousness, ear consciousness, all of those different ones will have their own set of 5 omnipresent factors that go along with them.
Okay, that's all. Now we can do that. 다나 초빙 모원나 시원하고 뭐 초빙 모원나 좋아하다가 그때에 너무 그때에 초빙 틀이 지시나 용이 틀이지 용화하다 좋아서니까 용화래서 용이 뭐
So then the entity of feeling is just as it has been taught in the Compendium of Knowledge. This one is another by the other brother, Asanga. And then he puts the question, what is the defining characteristic of feeling? But for feeling, the tiwa karare, the tsowa karare, the tiwa.
지와와
Then lemba, the nyong. So then the question is posed, what is the defining characteristic of feeling? And then the response to that is it has the characteristic of experience. So then what does it mean, experience? Then the further expansion on that follows. Through the entity of experience, it experiences individually the fruitional results of virtuous and non-virtuous actions.
feeling what they're told there was. Man, they don't maintain us and feeling what they're told do us. They need to cover you with not any give out them, giving, then joy by this.
Okay, so then. Right, yeah. So then, like, of course, we might not understand exactly what this text is talking about here. So we can think about it in terms of the way Buddhists understand the different types of feeling. So when you have a feeling of happiness, then that's a feeling like yeah, gewe debu yine mandebu majana. Yeah, you don't want to lose it. You don't want to lose it, right? So then the feeling of happiness is characterized by not wanting to lose it. When you have it, you feel like I don't want it to end. And then the feeling of unhappiness or suffering is the feeling like yeah, I don't want to have anything to do with this. That type of feeling. So on the one hand, the feeling of happiness is I don't want to lose this feeling. And on the other hand, the feeling of suffering is like, I wish I can get away from this. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. And those two, in terms of the Buddhist way of thinking about things, are the fruits of positive and negative action.
Yeah, that's correct. Whether they give out them, give it, then German, but it's not the so you want it. They come from
So
the
the
result for negative and positive, right?
the arisal of these types of feelings are the result of positive and negative actions.
The order, this just done it. She is one, but others.
So that's like the last,
Yeah,
the expansion there at the end of the definition in the response.
yeah, the order is better what. The two Noja number of she is one, but Raja, no, so they do come get them. They get number of men, the Kuna she pictures from my ends, order the opposite.
All right, so then here, that which is experienced by feeling is taught to be a fruition. This is taught for the purpose of making known that all feelings that arise within us, whether pleasant or suffering, are solely the fruitional result of actions.
보다 내가 또 난 남에게 나타내 양아치 강도 망고지인데 계속 더 말고서 저와 내가 차선 계획을 정하니까 저도 차선 막이 그랬나 아주 망고 걔는 말고서
걔는 말을
걔는 그 말을
Yeah, so you know the 남배 지로.
남배기 걔는 그랬어.
Yeah. So this is this assertion here that the experiences of happiness and experiences of suffering arise as the result of positive and negative action is accepted by Buddhists, but most non-Buddhists don't accept that.
주로 걔는 나도 뭐라나 예시다나 아주 기호도 왔어. 못하나.
Yeah. So some people say if you drive in the car, you should have the AC on. That will feel good.
We have good feeling, right? Maybe we have AC, maybe nice music. We feel happy, but we are happy, right? But do you guys think accept this is a result for giving job?
Yeah, is this the fruit of positive action?
What do you guys think? Can you accept?
Being driving in your car and it's comfortable with the AC and nice music.
Nice music.
Do you guys think so? Do you have a feeling that's the result of positive action?
Yes, otherwise you could be in a car accident and that would be the opposite.
What are your question or answer? Question. No question. Give me answers.
I think my question is my answer.
Not the question. Give me answer. You think this is a result, right?
Yes, result.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is it the beautiful music and the air conditioning?
No question. What's
He's asking you for the answer first.
Yes.
Yes, say your answer confidently. Yes.
I said yes.
How?
Yes.
How?
Because it's a happiness that we have, and if it's a happiness, it has to be a result from a virtuous action.
No, this is just we said, but
I know that.
we say, oh yeah, all happiness is result of, what we call it?
Virtue.
Virtue, but we have nice cars, driving, after we have, then we can put AC on, AC, right?
Yeah.
Very comfortable, nice music, then how you accept this result for?
So we say that. We say that.
We say, of course,
But he's asking like, how do you prove it? Come on, give us some reason.
I don't know. I don't know how to prove that.
Now, they do like that, For example, we create a lot of merit, we do some good virtue things. Then they say, oh, I did a good job. I'm happy. This is very easy to accept it. Because we really create a lot of merit, we do some offering things. After we say, oh, today I really feel good. What I wish I did done. This we can easy to accept because we lot effort there. After that we feel nice. Then, because we lot effort to what's positive.
Yeah.
Therefore not feeling, sometimes we have this feeling, right? We do a lot of hard working, we do a lot of virtuous things, we done, after done we have a very good feeling. I say, no, I'm done. It's very easy to accept that, but some other things, maybe a very nice meal, go to bar, you guys like to go bar? what's it, bar?
Bar.
Bar. And listen, if people like to the bar, they drink someday and then this feeling. This kind of feeling, literally, we don't want to lose this moment happiness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's all there was told there.
Yeah. So he's giving an example, counter example. So like, it's easy to accept when you do a lot of virtuous practice, prostration and offering and these kind of things, and then something nice happens, and it's easy to say then to yourself, oh, this is the experience of the fruits of my good deeds. But then what about like normal things, like his example, go to a bar, have a few drinks with your friends and you're feeling great, like it feels nice, you're having a good time. You don't want to lose that feeling either. Is it the result of virtue?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
Happiness cannot arise
That's a
from
good question.
non-virtuous actions.
That's a good question.
Okay.
I never been to bars. I don't know this.
Well, what are you doing after class?
Okay, anyway, but we are really that good condition, right? With a nice car, inside the car also electricity, we call that AC, all the things that. How they come? How we got this good, we call it?
Circumstance. Yeah.
Tunchen Zumbo.
Ah,
Tunchen.
tunkir.
Tunchen and
Tunkin. Yeah. How do you get these harmonious conditions?
conditions.
Hard work. Positive karma.
Well, I mean, I think also,
Yeah.
if you have enough money to buy a nice car,
Yeah.
and then you can ask again, how do you get enough money
You
to keep going?
hard work. You have no problem with some money, then you have enough to buy the car. All things, usually we believe, even people have some money, work, they can get results. They resort or what's it?
Yeah, they're,
Giving them this.
so, karekiwa.
Mama.
Yeah. So they're all of their kind of luck or being able to get all of those things is the fruition of previous lives, activities.
Conditions 다 깨닫다 나도 내가 제가 묵지를 딱 정치하러 왔습니다. 지도 대경이.
So the things that we normally look at that are immediately understandable to us, like working hard, getting a job, those kind of things, like getting the money from working, those are like conditions. But the primary cause, we believe, is in previous lives.
대입에 전생 안서 빼요. 그래서 그냥 미사지기냐. 부근이나 부근이 빠와하면 라빠 찍빠. 둘로 찍빠, 로로 찍빠잖아요. 부근이 야채 뭐잖아. 찍왜 엑세스. 찍 not excess was.
So,
대 기왕 능력이 내 사타에서 내가는 것이. 빠와는 처럼 돼요.
yeah. So his example, he's giving as an example, a hypothetical pair of children who are born in the same exact family, have the same parents, have the same clothes and material wealth standard, from their family. They go to the same school, but as they grow up, one of them goes one way, has a lot of success, and the other one, no matter what he does, can't. So the way that we understand that is it has to do with previous lives. The conditions in this life looks all exactly the same for all of them.
전제로 삼는 땅에 전제로 삼는다나 못하다 에스 잡아던 줘야 돼. 딱 기회를 그래서 그 제도를 가지고 갑자기나 그래서 못해야 보여. 야 아마니 야 나스카 이렇게 이제 result from that 그래서 에스 땅다 두고 왔으니까 다 이거 삼는다나 그냥 걔네 제도를
So in that way, if we think like about the example of driving in a car with the AC and everything is nice and going well, if we think immediately, like in the short term, like how did I get this? Of course, we can say, it's correct to say, like I worked hard and I earned the money and I bought this car. I had the chance to get this car. But if we think about the long term, then we have to consider like previous lifetimes, the longer the scope. So it's kind of like unraveling the cause of the cause continually. Eventually you end up
Okay?
And karma, how is something I will do that, did I talk to you? Okay, you can hear me all right. All right.
It's not for us, it's for the recording and for the live
recording.
broadcast.
Okay. So within cause and condition, within karma, for instance, I do something when I'm 11 years old, something within this lifetime. And then let's say I did something I wasn't proud of. And then it comes to say hello to me, let's say if I'm 24. Sometimes like something they call a snowball theory, where it will come and get you in time, and how it's balanced, how you need to correct it over time and through from past lives, how to make it better, how to sort of like how if you do something, it will come back to you. Yeah.
눕초가 고성에 이 눕초가 미 망시 이 렌제기 된다 가 로춘주 갑드 가 그래 미개고 칙 재성 되나가 로 니슈 갑드 되네 그래 데부데 누가 데부이야
대대방도 그래 통주용지지에 쓰시고 통주용지지에 통주용지지에 통주용지지에서나 세돌라 레사 네네 세멜란 레본만 봐 아주 마마 캐는 거였어 세돌라나 로추주 같은 레사 팀대로 로게고 가면 되거든 뭐요 근데 이거 그랬어
이어리 아니
나도 레슨을 저쪽에
예
통주용지지에 아니 때문에 요리지에 레라서는 레슨이 같은 거
yeah 하고서 so he's saying
간제 이거랬어 간제 로추주 가면 레사 야포도 같이 싸 대대로 로치모 가블라 정한 유슈선 주시가 대대로 놓고 이랬어
he's saying yeah it's true and they have this in their understanding of karma, like the way that they describe karma, there are 3 different types of karma. One type of karma is you might accumulate when you are young, at the time when you are young, and then experience the result of it when you are old, like in the same lifetime. And then there is other karma which is experienced like from a previous lifetime projected into a future lifetime. And then the other one is the one with no.
One is we create this life, maybe younger time.
But
No. Something not take her.
Yeah, okay. So then these two are
some first they get in your chile, and then told you chile. Tamode, told you we create that karma this life, also result come this life. This life.
Yeah.
And then told you, and then get in your chile na, we create that cause this life. Then the result come next life. Then if you cause this life, the result come not next life, maybe next life.
Yeah.
Couple.
Yeah. So that's clear, right? So there's basically like different scopes of the ripening of karma. It's possible that that things can ripen within one lifetime. So you've done something when you are young, and then you get the result when you are old. And then it's possible that you can do actions now that will ripen in the next life. And it's also possible you can do actions now that will ripen after the next life in some other life in the future.
Yeah, this is difficult, also. Of course, you guys, New Buddhism, we never had before. Difficult to accept, even Judaism, difficult to accept.
Yeah.
And we say, 지난게 양포치나, 지난게 파미 심바다 양포치나, 팀제고 지난게 민거리, 지난게 라가 민거리
So 기랑기 파마 기랑이 약보치나
심바라 벤톡치나, 지난라 팀제고 지난게 냐도거리스.
So if you do something good, like if you benefit other beings, like someone else, if you do something for the benefit of someone else, the good result of it comes to you.
심바 동가라 때니 용신 종을 해서 걔네들.
Yeah. So if you give to others, then wealth and things come to you.
그래서 단단한도 그나 아리 시차네 아메리카데 로마 도저 첨부 로마 소득 첨부 소대 첨부
소대.
소대 전부. that's not
뭔가 소대.
소름 전부.
아?
너무 소름 전부.
소름 제목 하려다. 예.
나도 망아치한테 동거였어.
So then, yeah.
근데 가지는 깨워 눈만에 초랑수 깨워 눈매기 밑에 내 약보 싸들이 되어버렸어.
So then in general, like when we look at America, we can say this is a country that has great merit, like a great stores of merit, because we can see it. Like there's a lot of freedom and wealth and abundance and everything here, which may be lacking in other places. And then the reason for that, the condition that we share, being born here or living here, has to come from the previous life.
아니 대마시다 소소를 저기 내가 네 몸을 내가 제 고에다 제라고 말했어. 나도 깔리게도 두수 고마워 내가 제 누웠어. 야, 두수까지 같이 대시 주셔.
And we don't have to work very much, is that what you're
We
saying?
have to walk. We have to walk that. We have to find some walk. We have to do something. Many people want to walk that. They don't walk. You can go to India, China, in Mexico. Many people just stay, just talk. They don't have a job.
Yeah.
But some part, maybe that those people may be more relaxed. Right? They don't much worry. Usually, we can check, most, not 100%, no. Most who has more, we can think many things, more, changeable,
Keta.
famous.
Oh yeah, thing, yeah.
More famous, they are more popular. More wealth, they are wealthy.
Wealthy, yeah.
Wealthy, more popular. Right? Then we call less famous, it's the less problem. Less one of the less problem.
Yeah.
Therefore, we call it. What we say? We think maybe some poor people may be very worried, maybe. The India and China and the Tibet and they're very hard working. If they want to walk, they're hard working, but they might more relax. Here they're very, very nervous, they're very worried. Right?
Yeah. So I had just a side note, one of my other teachers told me once, it's like everybody wants to be the famous one or the boss, to reach the top of the pile. But once you reach the top of the pile, then you have actually more trouble than everybody else. You might get all the money and all the fame and all the wealth, but also everyone has the expectation in you, and also you have to hold on to that. You worry you will lose it. So in a way, from the outside we can say there's like abundance and wealth and those types of things, but it doesn't necessarily mean the people are happier. And at the same token, you can see countries where there's a lot of poverty and whatever, but the quality of life might actually be higher. People might feel like, oh, I'm okay.
Okay. 다들 만나주죠. 다 간지만지 닐 배설 함도 왔을 초와 내도 컨디션을 때 leg 되고 됐어. leg 개와 담기 되고 됐어.
So this point of the text here is basically to say that this feeling, whichever it is, happy or unhappy feeling that arises, is the result of previous actions.
대한 어느 친구 지름을 나는 친구를 랭이부터는 소소 깨워던 법이 저와 쓰기 남을 진지 내와야지 내와 선진도 좀 야와시고 너무 써라 되는 제와야지 기위래지 쇼시 기위래 쇼 내매 사창도 치고
So then we'll just read this passage here from the Great Exposition of the Stages of the Path by Tsongkhapa. The manner in which actions are definite is as follows. Regardless of whether we are ordinary beings or superiors, all happiness in the aspect of pleasant feelings, even as slight as the produced independence on a cool breeze when one is born in hell, arises from virtuous actions accumulated in the past. Happiness cannot arise from a non-virtuous action. Also, all suffering in the aspect of painful feelings, even as slight as that produced in the mental continuum of a foe destroyer, arises from non-virtue accumulated in the past. Suffering cannot arise from virtuous actions.
later just saga yomana. Given number of subsidiary level.
Yeah. So the example here of the foe destroyer, so this is the arhat, like these ones that we were looking at before. Those arhats are defined by the fact that they have uprooted afflictions. So they have no manifest affliction at all. But they can still have suffering, the experience of suffering in their continuum. The only way that that's possible is it must be from previous lives. So in the life that they are in, when they become arhats, they have no affliction anymore. Yeah. So they're no longer accumulating afflictions or having any affliction, but they sometimes have a headache.
Something headache there. This what happens. Previous lives the karma. What is today?
So sometimes even the arhat, there's instances where an arhat can't find food, can't get food. If they have great merit, I mean, they have no affliction, but they can't find food, so the only way possible is previous life karma. Yeah. I've heard this. This always strikes me as so strange. Apparently also arhats, there is some example, I don't know, it's very strange. I hear it in Tibetan, from Tibetans a lot, that there are certain arhat who jumps like a monkey. Yeah, like maybe, I don't know exactly why this example comes up, but apparently they're arhat. They're also, because they have no affliction, the description of arhats in the in the text there is like completely serene. Like their comportment is so beautiful. Like to be in their presence, you notice right away they are special because of the way they carry themselves. But even those type of beings sometimes might jump like a monkey, suddenly. And the only way that that's possible is because of some habitual, tendency that has to do with previous actions in a previous life. Yeah. So what we call happiness is really the fruition of virtue. And what we call unhappiness is the fruition of non-virtue. And on the basis of virtue, it's impossible that there will be suffering. So if you plant the seed of an apple, it's impossible that you will grow an orange tree. Yeah, in the same way, if you plant the seed of an orange, it's impossible that you will grow an apple tree. You can't have a fruit that's different than the seed that corresponds to it. So.
Yes.
When you were talking about the automobile, and in Lama-Tsongkhapa's quote, pleasant comes from virtuous karma, unpleasant. What about the second situation, where you're essentially happy? Let's go back to the bottom. Here, where you're essentially happy. Okay, you've been there since noon and it's 10 o'clock. Yeah. All right, but I don't think anything. So you're happy.
Yeah.
But nothing virtuous is going on there, and I can't see that as the manifestation, the ripening of a virtuous karmic seed. So that particular happiness, as you're getting ready to fall off the bar stool, is that really happiness? Is that the pleasantness that we're talking about here, or is that something else?
But if you don't bar la drona, then chan mango tuna then rasi yongile, then kiram kibu yore, Kibu Mabuye. Yine Kibu de la Gewamindu. Gewamindu. The Semjum Gewamindu, right? Yeah. So this is okay. So first of all, he's saying like that type of happiness that you are talking about is the happiness that is contaminated. Yeah. So it's contaminated because it's concomitant with affliction.
Yeah.
So it's not like a pure happiness. And it dewa munerebe. So we can say that it's not real happiness, it's not true happiness, but it still is the happiness. It belongs to Torah, right? Yeah. So it's still under the purview of this feeling, the category of feeling that we're talking about. Even the contaminated happiness, which is still a feeling of happiness, although it has within it, it's contaminated by affliction. It's not going to create virtue. Experiencing that happiness by itself isn't going to produce virtue in the future, but it still belongs under the umbrella of this general category of feeling.
Can't you also generate more negative karma though the longer you stay in the bar?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so then he said, basically what you just said, the same type of example comes below. It's below in the text. We will get to an example very similar to that.
Thank you.
The Nagarjuna. So then, continuing on the same idea that happiness arises from virtuous actions and unhappiness arises from non-virtuous actions, we have a verse from the Precious Garland by Nagarjuna, which says, "From non-virtue comes all suffering, and likewise all bad migrations," which means like bad rebirth. From virtue comes all happy migrations, and the happiness within all rebirths. So then I think here the point is like also getting to the idea that it's not necessary that the fruition in general is good. You can still have happiness. So from virtue comes all happy migrations. So all of those happy migrations necessarily must come from virtue. But all happiness, any happiness within any rebirth must come from virtue. So even if you are born in hell and you have a moment of happiness, also it came from virtue. Okay. Yeah. So then below it says, therefore happiness and suffering neither arise without a cause. So they're not like just magically appearing with no cause, nor do they come from discordant causes such as the fundamental nature or Ishvara and so forth. And Ishvara and fundamental nature, these are both terms that are used by non-Buddhists in India to refer to God or like some kind of metaphysical principle that's the creator or originator of existence. Okay, so I'm going to read this first and then figure out what he just said. Rather, in general, happiness and suffering come from virtuous and non-virtuous actions, respectively, and even the various instances of happiness and suffering arise individually without even the slightest mix-up from the various instances of these two types of actions. Hence, gaining certainty regarding this definitiveness or infallibility of actions and their results is known as the correct view of all Buddhists and is praised as the foundation of all wholesome qualities. So that's now I understand. So the being able to understand or developing the feeling in your mind clearly that even the slightest happiness, the slightest one, has to come from virtue, has to have arisen from virtue. And even the slightest suffering has to have arisen from non-virtue. So gaining that type of view is called the correct view of all Buddhists. So like this is the kind of statement that karma, you Buddhists believe in this karma. Okay, so then even like you were giving the example of going to the bar and getting drunk. So when you go to the bar and you get drunk, you have some feeling of happiness that comes up, but also eventually you have like unconsciousness, like you pass out, and then no longer the feeling is functioning, the feeling is cut out, you're black out, So so then the feeling becomes one of suffering. So he was listing other bad things. You vomit, and then you have to clean yourself up. So at the end of the happiness that you experience from getting drunk, then suffering can come too. So then you have, when feelings are divided, there's three different types: pleasant feelings, suffering feelings, and neutral feelings. So then again we go back to the discussion of five aggregates by Vasubandhu, where he poses the question, what is feeling? And then his answer to that one, it is the three types of experience: pleasant, suffering, and that which is neither suffering nor pleasant. So then pleasant feeling is that which, when it ceases, you wish to meet with it again, which Geshe just restated in a different way to say, when you have it, you feel like, I don't want to lose it. So then in the opposite hand, suffering is that which, when it arises, you wish to be separated from it, or when you experience it, you don't want to have anything to do with it. So then that which is neither pleasant nor suffering is that which, when it arises, neither of those two wishes occur. Yeah. So then another way to think about it is the feeling of happiness is that feeling which, when it ends, you really wish that it will come back. And the feeling of suffering is the one you wish will never start again. Like just wish it didn't come. So then the third one, which they have this long title, that which is neither, anyway, equanimity or balance in between the two, essentially, is the one where you don't have any strong feeling one way or the other. Like this is the greatest thing ever, or this is the worst thing. It's just kind of a medium, easy going. So So then these three types of feeling also correspond to the different types of consciousness, main minds that you have. So you can have these three types of feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, and equanimous for an eye consciousness or an ear consciousness or nose or tongue, etc. for the five senses and also for the mental sense.
먼저 미크 수능을 통해 먼저 딱을 산다. 손을 ጭ고 내가 무시하고 싶어.
So then when you see a form, so when you see a form and you have a feeling of pleasantness from looking at the form, then this is the feeling that accompanies the eye consciousness. Sometimes when you hear a sound, some sound comes to your ear, you also have a feeling of pleasure, like it's a nice sound. Yeah, the same with your when some smell comes to your nose and you have a feeling of delight, in the smell. This is also the pleasant feeling of the nose consciousness. I think I don't even need to translate. When you eat ice cream or candy, you also have a feeling like it's really pleasant or delightful. So then the same, you have a sensation of being touched, a pleasant sensation from touching something soft or that feels good. This is also the pleasant feeling associated with the bodily consciousness. So sometimes you also can have pleasure that arises along with thinking about something. So you might just be thinking, just something that you think in your mind that has nothing to do with any of your five senses, but is just your thoughts, which gives you a feeling of pleasure or delight to think about that or to have those thoughts, which is also an example of pleasant feelings associated with mental consciousness. Okay, so then he's saying so in the same way, all of the consciousness, we went through pleasant feeling for all 6 of them. All of the consciousness have all 3 varieties of feeling, pleasant, painful, and equanimous. So he's not going to go through them one by one here because it's very, very rudimentary to just extend the same thing to all the other types of feeling for all the different types of consciousness. But these 3 exist for all 6 primary minds. So we're going to jump a little bit. There's a little bit of a debate there. You guys can read in your spare time. If you want to think more deeply.
One second.
Yeah.
On page 18, where it says, just that next bunch of lines there,
Yeah.
the 3 bodily feelings and the 3 mental feelings, and then they say that those bodily feelings are for the sense consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting to that, I suppose, right?
No, he's saying basically, so all that's telling you is that the 5 physical senses that you have,
right,
those senses that interact with the objective,
right,
well, let's put that in quote marks since
right,
we're at a Buddhist,
right.
The objective world that's outside you are called bodily, they're just put under the rubric of bodily feelings.
Okay, and then what the mental consciousness is the mental.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Right.
Thank you.
So he's saying yeah, this is that's what she was asking. So he's just reiterating the same thing. All 5 of the senses that are a part of the physical body that interact with the world out there, those are just grouped under the heading bodily feeling. So
근데 이제 나가지고 고주 좋아하다가 근데 semjo 되봐라. 그래 semjo 좋아하다.
Yeah. So and then whatever feelings that come along with the mind or thinking thoughts, those are just grouped under the heading mental feelings.
다 맨날 무시 고주 좋아하다. 가지는 내시 고주 좋아하라 그랬어. 그러나 왕보세야 돼. 내기 왕보세야 돼. 거기 깡대 뭐 쳐서 잡대가 없어. 내기 왕보. 내가 아니 무시 고주 좋아하라. 맛이 무시 고주 좋아하라. 내시 고주 좋아하라 그랬어.
So then why are these called bodily and mental feelings? So basically his answer to that is that what we call the bodily consciousness extends everywhere in the entire body. So including those organs, sensory organs that make the eye, the nose, and those types of things. So I think in the Tibetan way of thinking about things, they don't think of the mind as being based on an organ. Right? The sem wangbo yore. The brain lepa. Sempi wangbo yore. Lepa. Yeah. So Buddhists don't assert that the brain is the organ of the mind. So scientists say, when you are thinking thoughts, then it's going on in here. But Buddhists don't assert that. So he's saying like the nerves or the not nerves, what do they call the neurons in the brain, those are doing some work like when you are thinking about things, but still the Buddhists don't assert that that's the organ of the those aren't the organ of the mind. So this is like a really big conceptual difference, I think, between Western culture, which really thinks the brain is that's the organ for mental function. Yeah. He said that those nerves, those neurons are helping, they're doing something, they're contributing, but they themselves can't be the organ of mental sense. So he's saying the Tibetan, and I think also Indian, this comes from the Abhidharma Kosha by Vasubandhu, but the description of how the organs actually work is that inside the eye, in the black part of the eye, so the little opening, the iris or whatever, the pupil, in the back of that, there is some very small, subtle type of matter, which the form that appears to the eye strikes. And then that is actually the organ of the eye, is that subtle matter in the back of the eye, which is struck by the form that appears to it. Yeah. So on the independence on the form that appears to the eye, then and the subtle matter that's the actual organ of the eye contacting each other, then you have the generation of awareness, right? So the mikshe, kari mikshe, you need So anyway, I'm not sure if I will get it perfectly, but I think basically the basis of the organ, like the subtle matter in the eye, that's actually the physical eye organ, is that which connects the eye consciousness and the object which appears to the eye together. And di kare di shawe suk mena Then 믹쉐
샤베 수면 맨날 미시디 오토 말이지. 간나 왕보를 샤토 말아. 샤베 수면 맨날 왕보를 수샤야 말아.
So then this is like actually described in a way where these three things all depend on each other. So you can't have an I consciousness without the other two there. You need a functional organ for the form to appear to, and you need an appearing form, and you need the I consciousness all there at the same time for the I consciousness to exist. If you don't have if let's say you have an appearing object and you don't have an impediment to your consciousness, like let's say you're conscious, you're awake, but the organ of your eye is somehow damaged or deficient, then you won't have eye consciousness. You will be blind. So then, anyway, the point is that in the Buddhist way of thinking about things, because of the dependent nature of everything, those three facets all have to be present and functioning in order for the overall experience of vision to occur.
오케이 다 되는 것도 되는 막 콘솔라 이해와 마음도 다 에르클라에 오더라마 되는 독스와 다들 중요하게 가는 것도.
So then below there's lots and lots of divisions. Some of them may be similar to what Ed was talking about.
다들 그거 가지고 너무 같이 소환담을 연구를 했어요. 다들 에르클라에 아니야 사진지 소환되와 되는 사진지 그게 생명으로 주되시고 소환되와.
Okay, so then he's saying like amongst all of these different types of feeling that they list out, they list a whole slew of them there. You can see on page 19, and I think even going on to the top of page 20. Among those is listed a feeling of pleasure which arises contaminated by affliction. And then there's also an uncontaminated feeling of pleasure that arises from the realization of selflessness. So there's also some feeling associated with those realizations that's very pleasant, and that feeling is uncontaminated. And I'm asking my own question, sorry. I'm asking for a definition of the contaminated and uncontaminated. So then there's a lot of subtlety in terms of like, I don't know, theologically maybe not the right term, but anyway, when they debate this in monasteries, there's a lot of subtlety and nuance in the explanation of this. But what it boils down to is contaminated means any feeling or mind that arises in association with affliction. So you have attachment, like so for example, you're drinking alcohol and you get, I don't want to let go, or you might get angry and fight if you're angry drunk. It depends. Anyway, but the feeling that arises together with, contaminated by, or together with affliction, we call contaminated. And then those feelings that arise uncontaminated, not together with affliction at all, like totally divorced from any type of affliction, we call uncontaminated. Another way to put it is that the virtuous mind is uncontaminated, and the non-virtuous mind is contaminated. Another way, again, because there are many ways that this is argued or conceptualized, another way to put it is the mind that realizes emptiness and selflessness is uncontaminated. And all other minds besides that are contaminated.
나가 들으라고 삼나 초콜릿. 개와 가인 받아 사미 있어. 개와 가인 받아 사지 있어. 그냥 차와 다른 장 말이지.
Yeah. So he's saying just technically in the different druptas, like the arguments about philosophical positions, it says that generally a virtuous mind is uncontaminated and a non-virtuous mind is contaminated. But then he said also it's maybe not the case that, this is a little bit arcane and technical to explain, but it's not the case that a virtuous mind is pervaded by being non-contaminated. Chabamari. Yeah, it's not necessarily the case that there's a pervasion. So that has to do with logic and the way that you actually argue one thing. So yeah, it sounds like it's more involved than I want to translate. So I'm going to just say the answer is okay. Yeah, so he's summing up in the main point here. To sum up the section on feeling is that that feeling can be divided in three ways. There's pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral feeling. Pleasant feeling are those feelings which, when they arise, you feel, I don't want this to end, I don't want to be parted from this. Unpleasant feelings are those which, when they arise, you feel, I wish this will be over, I don't want anything to do with this. And the equanimous feelings are those which, when they arise, you don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. Yeah, and then of course, if you go into more detail, you can start to think about feelings being either contaminated or uncontaminated, which gets more, subtle, nuanced understanding. Yeah. And then basically, fundamentally, we can say that feelings of pleasure arise as the fruits of virtue, and feelings of unhappiness or suffering arise as the fruits of non-virtue. Yeah. However, if we give it some thought, we can see that feelings of pleasure may arise contaminated by affliction, and therefore it's not necessarily the case that they give rise to virtue on their own. So then we can think like the experience of drinking beer, the pleasant experience of drinking beer arises from virtue, but is the act of drinking beer itself a root of virtue? Is it producing virtue? So we have to think more subtly. So in one way, something is looked at as a result, but on the other hand, you can also look at it as a cause
of suffering.
Yeah. Is anyone the chunk? Yeah. Does anybody know what it's like to drink? Anybody here has drank before? Yeah. I will admit.
Read about it in a book.
Somebody told me.
I don't know, but chance you the way. Chance you
So then if you have the experience of drinking and you feel like, I want to hang on to this, I want this, I like this, I want to keep it, then you have to say that's the feeling of a pleasant feeling according to the definitions here. And if you have the experience of drinking and thinking like, I can't stand this, I want to get rid of it, then it's an experience of suffering. So this is something to be like analyzed or really like tested by debating, like really put it to the test, argue with each other.
Yeah,
Yeah. So now we've basically, I think, exhausted the topic of feeling. So the one that comes after this is discrimination. So, yeah. So then this one, I think he's saying that there's a lot. So yeah. Then after this, it just keeps going.
매일 좋아서 가리마. 좋아서 옷이 나가 요봐. 좋아라 요 엉엉 가리 요봐. 저기 subsidiary. 아니 좋아서 가리지 막 대하고 그랬어.
So he said that we basically need to understand the definition or the concept of feeling as described here as being the three different types, pleasant, unpleasant, and equanimous in relation to the five senses of the body and the mental sense. So that's the primary thing, to get a good conceptual grasp on feeling.
근데 좋아서 당하고 무시를 했나? 무시고 좀 도와를 때까지 생각 동안 내가 정도가 되는 무시고 좋아 와서 그러면 가서 무시 하긴 좀 뭐라 무시 도와하면 쌍거려 왔어.
So then we should think, when we see a beautiful form and have a feeling of pleasure, we should think like, is this the pleasure that arises from in connection with the eye? Like, is this a pleasure that arises concomitant with an eye sense? Or is this simply a mental pleasure? These are things we have to think about.
근데 다 대량하고 같이 무시고 좋아 대화를 되나 그래. 대라 너희 순 대화랑 통해 생각 대화를 놓았어. 대략 무시고 좋아 대화스.
연결성으로 미글라
그 순 통발할 때네. 나도 생각 좋아 대화. 깨도 와. 대략 무시고 좋아 대화를 하고 있어.
So we say, this is correct, right? That's what we say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we say that when you see a form and it produces a feeling of mental pleasure from looking at the form, we will call that a feeling of pleasure associated with the eye consciousness.
아니 집안 나를 전체가 제발 되는까지 생각 가서 대화를 조금 놓았어. 대략까지 다 원시 소소.
In the same way, we also say for the other five senses, when you smell something or taste something or hear something, and it gives rise to a feeling of mental pleasure, we also call those individually feelings of pleasure associated with their correspondent senses.
근데 좋아하는 양에지 강사 되는 걸 봤어. 좋아 영어스나 좋아 양케 수수냐 강사 거는 걸 봤어.
Yeah. So then he's saying, like, because the experiencer of the feelings associated with those five senses is mental, right? Kansa, the person. Yeah, and the person is the mind, right? So the experiencer is the person, and that person, the experiencer and the person, we can also say is I. So do you guys experience the feeling of your eye consciousness? Feeling associated with eye consciousness? He's asking.
Yes.
Yes.
When?
When you see an object.
Kandes or kadu? How? Kandes. How? So how?
What I explained is right or wrong?
Is his explanation correct? He's asking.
Right or wrong? You're different way?
Is there some other explanation? Anybody? So he's asking, do you accept what he says when the form appears to the eye, and then you have a feeling of pleasure or whatever associated with the form that appears to the eye? It's a feeling associated with eye consciousness. Do you accept?
Yes.
Is there a different way? Any other way of? Yeah.
So I'd say for a physical sensation, like maybe some salt water coming to your eye and it's unpleasant, it's definitely the eye, organ. But for something like looking at a painting and liking it or disliking it, that would be the mental judgment that comes after the consciousness.
어제 야도 나사 땅에 가지 가다 들어왔어. 가다 됐다는 거. 나사 안녕이 쓰냐 그래.
So he's asking, so who is the experiencer of the pain when the salt water goes in your eye?
가다 될 누구용이 가다 되냐 그거. 벌써 네. 근데 다들 몰라도 쇼시 되지랬어. 뭐가 사서는 아니 좋았던 거냐. 양에는 가다냐. 가와르나 무시가 대중할 때는 양으로.
Yeah, so he's saying like the pain that's experienced, the person who experienced the pain in dependence on the eye is the same as the person who experienced the pleasure in dependence on the eye sense. So maybe the Miki Nata Tang Miksheki Dungel Gitsoa, the Kagari, Miki Nata, Kadenge Ta Mik Nalalu, and then Nata. Then Miki Nata, Miksheki Toa Malik. Then Miksheki Toa, Tang Miki Toa, Kagari, Miki Toa di Lugi Toa.
리초, 나는 걸 리초에 나와.
Yeah.
미식을 좋아하는데 리초에 있어. 가지나 리초 참 시박한가 차고 와다. 리초에서.
So then I think he's saying like
리초에서.
yeah. So then this is also a way to go back on page 18 where it breaks down the division of the senses into the bodily, the three senses, the three bodily feelings. So pleasant, painful, or whatever, are for the body, which covers all five senses, physical senses. So he's saying like, the feeling of pain to your eye is actually the bodily feeling. One, because it's like the sense itself is a part of the body. So there's like bodily feeling, which is like the physical, tactile feeling. But then there's also the feeling associated with sight, produced by the eye. So I think that there's a slight distinction between the two, but in general, they all belong under bodily feeling. All five of the senses belong under bodily feeling because the organ itself is like a physical organ where, like you saw in the conversation, I'm not sure that they say there's a physical organ that's the seat of the mind. So, so then, yeah, so he's saying it's a good question and a good thing to think about is that there's like so many varieties, like all different types of variety of feeling that we experience with the body. So we have like pleasant and unpleasant experiences for all of the five different senses, and then we have pleasant and unpleasant experiences because of the physical, like the physicality of the organ itself. So like if you pierce your tongue, you know, it's painful. Is it a painful sense associated with the tongue consciousness or a painful sense associated with the body consciousness? I think this is like a good thing to think about, this kind of subtlety. So all five of the feelings associated with the five senses are generally grouped under bodily feeling. Because the body is, all of those are pervaded by the body. You can't define the body and, you know, or define those without them being a part of the body. So you can't have the five senses without it being a body or part of the body.
Also we can say, what's that?
So miksheki korsum.
Yeah, miksheki kortusum. Miksheki kortusumi towadewa. miksheki towadewa dunga. Then they can't let that miksheki and salni dunga teya.
So I'm not sure I'm getting, but when we have an eye consciousness of a form, there's also the tsalumra. Oh, salt. Yeah.
살이 나사 담아지. 나사 담이 둥아.
Milkshake.
이렇게 나가 살.
그냥 milkshake 토와 or 미기 토.
근데 미키 토라다 미키 토. 일단 미시 토라 그러고. 가지 미시 토.
Milkshake 토.
미키 토는 거는 단위로 미시.
Yeah. So
미키 토 되어요 말.
Okay.
미시 토.
So we're parsing we're talking again about the eye and the salt thing, and whether the feeling of the pain from getting salt in your eye is a bodily or a eye consciousness feeling. So he's saying you have to call it an eye consciousness feeling, because I asked again, and he said because the sense of the pain that's in there is through your eye. Like your awareness of your eye as an organ is what's giving you the sense of the pain. But at the same time, we also count that as being the body.
Right.
And milk.
If you
milk 살 보내다.
eye.
I can't 찍어요. 여기다 미시.
미시 다다 말이지.
지금 가로.
eye is the
Just that guy.
yeah, 남준 미리 원포.
밀크 오면
미리 원포.
밀크 오면 좋아 내가 요 말했어.
So we don't have actually there's no term for, there's no category here for suffering of the eye organ. Because I think you need a awareness has to be conjoined with the organ for it to be sensed. Yeah, so then in that case, they don't actually have even the construction to say like eye pain, just eye pain. It has to always be like eye consciousness pain, because the conscious part of it is it's like part of the equation. In order to know that there's pain in the eye, there has to be an awareness there to experience the pain. If you just say it's the pain only of the eye itself, then even I think the eyeball that's not connected to a head should have pain.
This makes good sense to me. All this makes really great sense because, let's say I stub my toe. Ouch. My body is trying to tell me this, and it's not disciplined. It's like a child crying at me. And I find that if I let myself center, and it's not stepping away from that sense, that, part of your toe, it's realizing that I can be neutral with it, and I can be with it, but in ways I calm it down. So it's telling me, all right, I'm hurting. Are you going to do something about it? So within the mental and the feeling, and also the physical, I can make peace with that by understanding the awareness and mindfulness that, I'm hurt, it'll go away. But with calming yourself down, it can go away. Just like controlling a heartbeat by will, I can do that, and also my body temperature by will. It's their practice. But yeah.
Okay. So no question.
Ian has
You're cut.
시박 수매나
You did it.
시박 수매나 부모카는 좋아하는 거랬어. 시주고 시박. 신신다.
Yeah.
말을.
Yeah. Shiva the sumena.
시박
Sum alene.
아주 누구는 같이 하잖아. 내주잖아. 내주더라 소화가 말. 내 자는 소화가.
Yeah. So he's saying like basically those three we talked about before. There's the consciousness, the organ, and the object of that particular sense modality. If all three are not present, then you don't have an awareness. So in that, I think he's just restating in another way to think about why they always call it the feeling associated with an eye consciousness.
다음에나 단단 무시 가도 몇가지 무시해요 와지 그냥 멍통이로 와서 몇가지.
Yeah.
They could open the eye that they don't see.
Yeah.
I don't know. You can put that kind of person there to make it stop.
I think they have pain.
I think pain, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
근데 다 되게 pain다 그래. 다 무시고지 저래. 그 무시해요만 왔어.
Yeah. So he's saying, I think Geshe is you Deborah turned on his internal debate mind. So he's logically playing it out in his mind. So he's saying there are people who are blind. So they don't have eye consciousness. But if you put salt in their eye or injure their eye, it hurts them.
I don't know, what do we call this?
I would say a feeling. It's a,
So I'm saying like that's a body. That's a has to be.
I'm on your side there.
Because the eye is a part of the body.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
not eye consciousness.
But it's good anyway, everybody think about this thing of it, but if you think think about, but main thing is feelings and alcohol.
Yeah. So we should think about these kind of things, but the main point he's reiterating is we need to understand feeling.
And feeling has many feelings, then we get debate. Okay? You have short question or long question?
One's just a response to that, and then I have a question from earlier that I wanted to ask. I'll make it quick. So if you put salt in somebody's eye, it can't be a feeling of the eye consciousness, because the function of the eye consciousness is to see forms.
Yes.
You can't see pain. You can have pain from seeing a vision, but it's a different kind of pain from the body. But like it has to be body consciousness.
Unless someone has synesthesia. This debate is just waiting to happen. Synesthesia is like some people have in their brains, scientists we will say it's a function of their brain, but things are crossed essentially. So the signal from your eye is processed by the back part of your brain called the occipital lobe, which normally processes vision. But some people have their brain is unusual or wired in such a way that the input into the eye, those like little impulses that are sent in the neurons in the brain, are processed by the part of the brain that normally processes input from the ear. So they hear colors. When they see the color purple, they might hear like the tone E flat or something like that. There are people who have this, and it's verified because they can put them in a fMRI scanner and show them different stuff, and they see, like when they see all these colors, actually the temporal lobe, the part of your brain that normally processes sound, is what's doing all the work. So
wouldn't that be the sense organ though?
this is another debate. I mean, there's a lot of debate to be had around the idea of senses and sense modalities, and I think in general the Dalai Lama is introducing slowly science education to the monks, but until they have like a real grasp on all of the conceptual stuff that you need to really get into the debate in detail, it's really hard to conduct. But yeah, I mean there's...
So if they hear the E flat for a color, wouldn't that be mental consciousness? Is it something they're actually
No, they actually hear a sound.
But there's no sound there. Isn't that just mental?
No. They hear a sound. You're predicating sound on it being external.
Well, there has to be an object then the sense or ear.
Is it true? So when you have dreams and people are talking to you in dreams,
that's mental consciousness.
and people are talking to you in dreams, though, you sense sound.
No, that's mental consciousness.
Milam
It's not
Kabdu.
hearing consciousness.
Milam Kabdu.
If it's a dream, it has to be mental consciousness. It can't be a hearing consciousness.
This depends on how you define those. So some people may define them like this definition here is very much like an atomist definition, where there's like an object out there in the world that impinges on some sense here that in concert with awareness produces an awareness of that object. But then there are other people who say, the mind-only school, the Samtampas, there is no object out there. The objects, all of them are really in your mind. So in the same way, when you dream, the elephant in your dream is really only different from the elephant in the real world by virtue of the type of experience you can have with the two of them, but not really by nature. By nature, they're the same.
That's easily refuted.
Easily? You think so? I think if a Sangha came here, he would just whoop your butt.
Well, of course he would.
Okay. I think
So just one short question about karma. About earlier, the example Geshe gave, like if we drive a nice car, we hear pleasant music, we feel pleasant AC on. So the pleasure that we're experiencing, is the nice car, the music, the AC, is that a result of our karma? Or is it the feeling, the pleasure, the result of our karma?
거성에 그들이랑 모두 야구 연하남디 moda yabu di chatang changma yabu kabdu di moda de kirangi gewe legi debu rebe yangmina di towa chiku di dewe towa chiku.
인자에 건나 저기 겨와요 서울인데 저라 모타요 모타를 좀 좋아도 인자에.
He's saying both of them are.
So if I have somebody in my car with me, and they're in the same car, the same music, the same thing that they're feeling, but they experience discomfort. So it's the same object, but for them it's discomfort. So wouldn't that be just the feeling is the result of it, or would that's the only thing that throws me off a little bit. What, their feeling is unhappy.
Yeah, but they don't own your car though.
Yeah, but they hate his music.
One person's right, so I listen to a song, it gives me
Therefore,
pleasure.
there's a different karma.
So
Some of those are hit like
the music is not the result of the karma, it's the pleasure, right? The feeling.
So see, you sound to me like you really should be a mindfulness person.
You have the car also is the result of the karma. You have the feeling also karma. You have good karma, you create, then you get the car. You don't, not good, you don't get car. You know, we say, you generosity, the result will come for you. Whatever you have a wealth, what's that, wealth?
Yeah.
Here, it's what's that? A result of the period of time, what called generosity.
Yeah.
So if somebody hears that same thing I'm hearing, but to them it appears as discomfort. So what is the
different karmic seed?
And they're not you though. I mean, this is like you can't predicate the good karma on just your own taste. So for you, getting like whatever car you desire, that's good karma.
For you, the other one, they want different karma.
Yeah.
Someone doesn't like, they hate also their karma.
So the karma is not. That's the only thing I've heard.
Karma is very subtle, you know.
It's so.
Yeah.
Is the karma the result of the karma in the object? Because if that were the case, then everybody would have to see that as pleasant.
This is like overlooking one fundamental thing in Buddhism that you can't be stressed enough, is that everything is dependent.
Yeah.
So it's all relative, and particularly relative to you. So for example, having a car, for you who really wants a car, and having a car of your own and being able to have the freedom to travel where you want, when you want, and all of those things, that seems like good karma. But then for someone else who might be burdened with a car, somebody has a beautiful car and they're going on vacation and they decided, you're going to take care of my car while I'm gone, and now you have to park it and move it and look out for parking tickets and all of this stuff, then it's a bad thing. It really depends on the person.
So
it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that the object itself doesn't have anything to do with their experience.
Well, that's a condition. Like, that's a contributor.
Right,
But the main karma fruition is the experience, the person's experience.
Okay, now it's done, yeah.
Yeah. I think we should let Geshe Ngawang go to bed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Geshe.
Are you have to go walk?
Oh, yeah. I have to catch my bus.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Thank you,
yeah.
this is wonderful.
Good, okay. Short play.
Yes, sir.
Just mandala and
Dedication.
dedication, yeah.
Okay. Okay, on page 39.